Yes, Dr. Tan, you can see, and let's do it. Share slides now. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Are we good?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Good morning once again to everyone, and thank you, Health Coach International, for the opportunity once again. To speak at this forum. I'm really looking forward to sharing hopefully, some useful insights to all of us here. Now, the topic for today is sleep like the CEO. Why high performers prioritize sleep? As during our initial discussion with Samantha just now, I would try to approach this subject matter not solely from the wellness perspective per se, but also in a sense of how we can leverage sleep as a performance enhancing tool, as a strategic assets for leaders as well as for high performers. In doing so, I'll be looking at three major field of studies, namely sleep science, neuroscience, as well as leadership, using an evidence-based approach. So this is what I'm going to cover today. I will look at why sleep actually does to your brain and why leaders cannot afford poor sleep, how sleep impacts decisions, stress, and performance, and why sleep is indeed a competitive advantage to leaders. Now, leadership today, or used to be for decades, leadership has been shaped by the industrial age mindset. Work longer, push harder, rest later, right? In the industrial world, we are measured by the output itself. And oftentimes, if you think about it like the machines, right, we don't want to have downtime. We do as much as possible to minimize the downtime. And the leaders are actually measured by the output. In other words, the quantity that they produce. So therefore, you heard people saying things like, I will sleep when I die, right? Hustling is considered to be a badge of honor to many people. And sleep and recovery is deemed to be laziness to some people. But unfortunately, this is no longer true. Leadership today is no longer mechanical. Rather, it is cognitive, it is very emotional, and most important of all, it is also very decisions intensive. For that, you really need to have your brain to perform at the optimal level. Contrary to what many people believe, sleep is actually not a downtime at all. If you look at the science itself, sleep is a time when the body and the brain really goes through some massive repair, recalibrations, and rejuvenations. In fact, as a matter of fact, our brain is actually more active during sleep than when you're awake, because that's a time when recalibration is happening in a major way. I'd like to delve into this subject matter by inviting you to go deeper into the different parts of the brain itself. The first part that I want to talk about is the prefrontal cortex itself, which is the leadership brain. I'll call it the CEO brain. This is the part of the brain that is responsible for decisions, for judgment, for impulse control, and so on. Right? The CEO of the brain itself. In fact, this is the part of the brain that really differentiates us human being from animal itself. Human being has the largest and the most developed prefrontal cortex. Right? Compared to the next one among animals, actually chimpanzee. But chimpanzee actually has a much smaller, even though it's the second most intelligent animal, but it's actually much smaller than the human brain. So this is a very precious real estate itself. But the fact is that it only works when you have proper rest and recovery. Because if you don't do that, right, the science is telling us that one night of sleep deprivations can actually result in the CEO brain underperform by up to 40%. So as a result, your executive control system fundamentally weakens with a night of poor sleep. So that's the CEO brain. The next one I want to talk about is the emotional brain, also called the amygdala itself. Right? The amygdala is where you process stress and you have threat detection itself. Right? If you think about amygdala as the alarm system, right? If you don't sleep well, the amygdala is going to be overreacting. The alarm system is going to go haywire. And studies telling us that one night of poor sleep can actually result in 60% aggravations in your amygdala itself, your emotional brain. So if you look into that in the context, right, if you have a 40% decrease in your CEO brain or your emotional or your impulse control brain, at the same time you have a 60% increase in your agitations part of your brain, imagine what kind of things is going to happen. Right? Sometimes the small issues, simple matters can actually escalate and become major. Right? This is why Daniel Goleman, who is actually widely perceived to be the father of emotional intelligence, talk about the idea of emotional hijack. It's where the time when, when you are really sleep deprived, your emotional brain actually takes over from there. And the third part that I want to introduce is about this thing called hippocampus. Hippocampus is actually a learning and memory brain for us. Now, the thing is, as a leader, I'm sure you agree with me that all of us need to be good learners. Every day we are bombarded with new informations, new data, and all that. Right? The only time when we can actually store and consolidate those information and data is a time when we go into deep sleep. In fact, the hippocampus is actually a short-term memory bank. When you go into a deep sleep, it's going to store those temporary information and move it to a long-term storage part of the brain called the neocortex. So imagine if you have a situation where we don't sleep well, right? This transition itself cannot take place. It's just like, let's say you're writing, a masterpiece, right? And after 15 minutes, you forgot to press the save buttons. Imagine all the hard work that you have done, all the creative juices that you have produced, you've actually lost in that process itself. Like deep sleep is important for you to consolidate your memory itself. And if you don't do that, it's not only the memory is lost and not safe. At the same time, when you wake up the next morning, as a leader, we need to acquire new data and new information. Because of the fact that the hippocampus is already full, you no longer have that capacity to take in more information and data itself. That's why you have people who complain. People who don't sleep well, they will complain that, hey, how come, how come I didn't, I didn't manage to learn new things. You see the impairment in terms of your ability to learn new things. Now, the brain is about 2% of our body itself, but the interesting is it is very energy intensive. It actually consumes up to 25% of total energy expenditure of the cell. And because of that, the brain is very metabolically active. And as a result, the brain is also very, very producing a lot of metabolic waste. Right? The only time when the metabolic waste can actually be flushed out, or we call it a brain detoxification, is only happening during the deep sleep stage. This is where the so-called the cerebral spinal fluid is going to be very, very active, and it's going to flush out all the metabolic waste and toxins, including beta amyloid as well as tau protein. That only happens during deep sleep. So if you think about this, as a leader, if you don't sleep well, you don't have enough deep sleep, all these toxins is going to remain in your system. And the short-term consequences will be like brain fog, but the long-term consequences is likely to be cognitive decline, which leads to issues such as dementia as well as Alzheimer. So to put this into perspective for you, you can see that the four important parts of the brain, right? The prefrontal cortex failure in the context of sleep deprivations, that is going to affect your decisions quality. We have amygdala hyperactivity, which is going to be exploding your emotions. You become a lot more agitated easily. Your hippocampus impairment leading to memory, inability to learn and memorize new things, learning capacity significantly decline. And finally, your lymphatic stagnation. Lymphatic system refer to the brain cleaning system that I spoke about. Right? You have brain fog as well as cognitive decline. This is what I call a total executive compromise. Now, it's not only about that. Sleep is also a very important asset when it comes to innovation itself. I think this part is probably not very much talked about. Right? In the sleep context, you have a few stages, one of which is called deep sleep, which is what we have just spoken about. Another important phase is called a REM sleep, right? So-called the rapid eye movement, or in layman terms, is a dream sleep. Right now, dream sleep is a time when your brain is able to connect all the different dots. Right during the deep sleep phase, we would retain and consolidate data, and that provide a background for the brain to actually work further during the REM sleep phase. Right, this is a time when the brain start to connect those distinctly different information, right, disparate information, and put them into context so that new insights and new innovations can actually be generated. Now, Steve Jobs talks about connecting the dots, right? We can only connecting the dots by looking backwards, right? We cannot connect the dots by looking forward. So the only time when the brain is able to connect the dot is during the REM sleep phase. So therefore, you see that a lot of innovations actually happen during sleep itself. As a matter of fact, I do not know you guys know about this. Google was actually conceptualized during the dream itself, and you have famous composer Paul McCartney and all these things, right? New songs being invented, and also Thomas Edison. A lot of new ideas actually came about during his sleep itself, and that shows how important sleep and innovations can be. Now, aside from that, REM sleep is also very good for emotional reset. As a leader, I think we are constantly exposed to different types of stress and all that. Sometimes, a small problem, or rather, sorry, sometimes a major problem, right? Major issues and all that. But if you have a good night of sleep, you may realize that the next day you wake up, actually it's no longer such a big issues anymore. And why is that so? It's because during that REM sleep itself, the brain is going through a recalibration process. The nervous system is being recalibrated. The same issue, same problem, but you no longer see it as such a big magnitude. So this is why Dr. Matthew Walker, who is a leading neuroscientist in the world, used to describe REM sleep as an emotional first aid. I think REM sleep is actually one of the most powerful tools for stress management. Now, since we are all talking about CEO and leaders, I want to spend a little bit of time to talk about sleep and decisions making. Because as CEO, I think we are measured by the quality of decisions we make. So the questions I ask you is, would you trust a surgeon, right, who has not slept for, let's say, 36 hours to operate or perform an open heart surgery on your loved one? Chances are you won't. Right. Similarly, if today you're on board a flight from, let's say, Kuala Lumpur to Los Angeles, and before the flight takeoff, the surgeon, or rather the pilot, tells you that I have not slept for 24 hours, but it's okay, no worry, because I have enough coffee. Would you still continue with the journey? And I ask the same questions. Would you trust a CEO to make multi-million-dollar decisions, knowing that he's actually operating in an intoxicated conditions? Well, all this may sound a bit, I may stretching it a little bit too far, but the uncomfortable truth is that many of our leaders are actually operating in such conditions. So let's look at the precise cause of prolonged wakefulness itself. Now, from the scientific point of view, if somebody is staying awake for 17 hours, that is equivalent to about 0.05% of blood alcohol level. In layman terms, it is similar to being half intoxicated. Now, anything 20 hours and beyond, the equivalent blood alcohol level will be 0.1%. In other words, you're actually legally drunk. That is how severe it can be. Now, to put this into context, I want to share a case study of NASA. Right? In 1986, January 28, NASA decided to launch the Space Shuttle Challenger. At the time of the launch itself, in the morning itself, the weather condition was extremely cold. There were a lot of warning signs, telling them that they should not proceed with the launch. Despite all of this, NASA decided to proceed with that. Tragically, 73 seconds after the launch, the Challenger exploded and all 7 astronauts on board were killed. Investigation from the Roger Commissions actually found that the people who are responsible for making the decisions were actually severely, sleep deprived. Most of them slept on average of only 2 hours just before the launch itself. And in one case, there's one person who's even, more than 24 hours without any sleep. So because of sleep deprivations, the ability to assess risk management has been severely compromised, and has led to a major catastrophe. I can cite you many other examples as well. The Exxon Valdez oil spill, and many other instances. So we talk about cognitive, clarity. We talk about emotional reset. How about your body itself? And I'm sure as leaders, we need to have strong enough body. The biology has to support the brain, right? Has to support us to do execute a better job as well. So sleep is one of the most important, interventions as far as concerned when it comes to the physical health of the leader itself. Right? No part of the body does not benefit from a good and restorative sleep itself. And I highlight a few benefits for your considerations. Firstly, it's about improved cardiovascular health, right? Especially for those of you who has high blood pressure, right? Deep sleep is only the time of the day where your heart can really rest more properly. So improved cardiovascular health is one thing. Second, about better glucose regulations, right? Sleep is a time when there's a lot of hormonal resets. So insulin sensitivity is massively affected if you don't have proper night sleep. I've seen studies that shows that one night of poor sleep can actually result in insulin sensitivity dropping by a whopping 25%. And for people who slept only 4 hours consecutively for 6 nights, a healthy person can actually become pre-diabetic. So that shows you how important sleep is as far as hormonal reset is concerned. And of course, if you sleep well, you have a much stronger immunity, right? In our body, when we sleep, the body will release this thing called NK cells, natural killer cells, which is very important to fight cancer as well as infection. So one night of poor sleep can actually result in 70% drop in the NK cell itself, thereby massively increase the risk of infections and so forth. And finally, as a leader, we want to have high energy. We want to be always able to perform at the tip-top conditions, and sleep affords you that. So in summary, if you look at sleep itself, I would like to describe it as a Swiss Army knife. Right? If you look at this, we just look at how sleep can recalibrate you cognitively, can reset you emotionally, as well as benefit you physically. So as a leader, just one simple intervention itself can actually have three major benefits. Talking about ROI, I think this ROI is really, really insane. So sleep is actually your nighttime pharmacy. And the good thing is it's actually free, right? It's actually free. So we don't need to spend, right? Unlike going to buy supplements and all these things, even you go to gym, you have memberships, and all. Sleep is absolutely free. And why are we not using it? There's a studies in the world of sports, right? Stanford University School of Medicine did a study that looked at the performance of the college basketball players, and they look at how sleep actually affect the performance. And some of the findings are actually very interesting, and I like to share with you. Right? The study found that if you increase the average sleep duration of the basketball players by just 1 hour alone, long throw shooting accuracy actually increased by 9%, and the response time, or rather the reaction times, actually improved by up to 12%. So as we know, in the ultra competitive world, sometimes the margin between winning and losing could be just 1%, right? Whether you're getting a gold or you're getting a silver, the margin is really thin. And if you just invest 1 hour in sleep, look at what kind of return that we are getting. So today, in the sports world, people talk about. I've heard many cases where sports person caught for doping and taking illegal drugs and all that to improve their performance. But what if today, if I tell all the elite sports people, you can actually buy a pill, you can buy a drug, right, that is legal, that can actually enhance your performance, and that drug itself is actually sleep. I'm sure all the athletes will be happily invested in that. And that is what elite sports people, elite athletes actually understand this. Right? If you look at the gentleman on the left, right, for those people who are, tennis enthusiasts, you will know that this guy, Roger Federer, is actually one of the most accomplished, one of the greatest tennis player of all time. Roger Federer, during tournament, right, when he was competing, he actually slept for 10 hours or more, right? In fact, he didn't really want to talk about, his sleep habit so much when he was still actively playing, because he knew that this is actually one of his secret weapons to performance. So that is Roger Federer. Now, the gentleman on your right is Usain Bolt, right? 8-time Olympic gold medalist. Right? Usain Bolt famously slept and woke up 30 minutes just before Olympic finals. And guess what? Not only did he win the gold medals, he also broke the Olympic record. So the question is now, if athletes optimize sleep, why don't our leaders also do that? Right? The stake is high for leaders in the corporate world, and I think it can arguably even higher than people, in the sports world. So why are the leaders not willing to invest in the sleep? I think it's fair, and I think you will agree with me that as a CEO, nobody would judge the performance of the CEO based on how many emails he actually replies. But you would judge a CEO based on the quality of the decisions that he makes, especially when it matters the most. Sleep is foundational to quality of your decisions. And that is why, CEOs such as Ed Bezos famously invest in the sleep. Right? He prioritizes sleep, and he basically tell the world that he slept 8 hours a day. Right? I quote him: "My job as a CEO is to make a small numbers of high quality decisions. Therefore, my job is to sleep well." Jeff Bezos understand that to make good quality decisions, sleep is fundamentally important. Now, forward-thinking companies actually understand this, right? If you look at some of the examples that I've quoted here, Google actually has incorporated sleep education as part of its leadership development program itself. In NASA, sleep is considered to be something that is non-negotiable. And interestingly, in the case of Aetna itself, the company actually pays the employee to sleep well. Right? They pay them up to $500 a year if they can record consistently 7 hours of sleep or more. Companies don't do this just because of any other reason, but because they understand the ROI of investing in sleep. And that's the reason, right? They see sleep as actually a performance infrastructure, not just a wellness per se. Now, in the bigger context, if you look at the macro economy, there's a study done by the Rand Corporation that look at the cost of fatigue. And what they found is, the cost of sleep deprivations is quantified at US dollar 400 billion a year. And we've seen similar figures in Japan. If I recall correctly, it's about 160 billion in the case of Japan itself. Right? And it's because of lost productivity, absenteeism, as well as presenteeism. So the mindset is no longer, whether you have time to sleep, right? Just like Samantha spoke about it just now, right? It's just not about the whole mindset is about, I don't have enough time to sleep. But rather, the high performer mindset should be sleep is indeed my superpower. Right? Just by investing in that sleep itself, you get all the benefits cognitively, emotionally, and biologically. Sleep is not a luxury, it is a leadership strategy. Right? When we talk about luxury, we would say that this is something that's optional because it's luxury. It's good to have, but it's not necessary. But when we talk about strategy, it really means that it's something essential. Right? Today's purpose, if I manage to deliver any message to you, that will be the one. Sleep is indeed a non-negotiable. It's a leadership strategy rather than just a wellness, good to have things. So if I look across, many corporate people still don't understand or rather underestimate it. So in that sense, it actually gives you a strategic advantage, right? The more or the earlier you actually understand it and embrace it, the greater your unfair advantages to your fellow competitors. So I want to end these presentations by quoting Arianna Huffington, who's the founder of Huffington Post. Arianna Huffington famously talked about this. You can actually sleep your way to the top, and literally you can actually do that. With that, I conclude my presentations, and over to you, Samantha.
Facebook and take a look. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Dr. Dan, actually, I would like to also know this, right? If someone wants to improve the sleep, starting tonight, and what is the one most important habits or change you would recommend him or her?
Thank you for the questions, Samantha. Actually, because of time constraint, I'm not able to address, the sleep strategies. This is another topic by itself. It's lengthy and can be very comprehensive. But I think if you would ask me one strategy,
One strategy.
yeah,
Yeah.
one strategy, one habit,
What?
I would suggest that, yeah, actually, I think I should do one more than one. I think it's to stick to a consistent sleep and wake up time. Right? I've seen many studies that's talking about different things, but one of the most consistent things that I've seen is the sleep and wake up time, especially when it comes to wake up time itself. Right? You may be sleeping late, right? As you mentioned just now, and sometimes we have events, we have things happening and all that. But if you can wake up consistently, let's say for me, it's about 6 to 6:30, right? Every day. In a normal day, I'll wake up 6 to 6:30. So even if I sleep late the night before, right? Let's say 1 o'clock, I will still wake up because the brain likes to have a rhythm. Lifestyle is we want to have a rhythm, we want to get used to all that. So you wake up, every day consistently, and not just during the weekdays itself, but also during the weekend. Right? If you imagine you have a different pattern. The weekdays you wake up 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. rather, and then in the weekend you wake up like 10, 11 a.m. and all that. So the brain will get confused. So you train your brain to do that, right? By waking up consistently at the same time also, ironically, it helps you to go to sleep earlier also because let's say you have to wake up by 6 p.m. and I know that it's 11:30 and you get so scared and say, oh, I better go to sleep. So give you motivations to do that. So that's number one. If I may add another one, Samantha, is the fact that after you have woken up in the morning, go and get some sunlight in the morning, right? 10 minutes to 15 minutes if possible. Face yourself in sunlight. The reason for that is going to reset our circadian rhythm. Right? In our body, it's all this biological clock. We have more than 300 biological clocks in our body itself. By resetting itself, it's going to realign our circadian rhythm so that you will stay more awake during the day. Right? Cortisol level is going to go up. Melatonin is going to come down. Melatonin is for sleep. Cortisol is for energy and it's for wakefulness. So you're going to reset that, and guess what? It's going to help you to fall asleep better also if you do that at night. And you get the vitamin D, right, which is crucial, a very crucial nutrient as well. Vitamin D also helps you to produce melatonin, which is the hormones that is responsible to activate the sleep. So you get really multiple benefits by doing that.
All right. Okay, thank you. And we have another question is from Yuhaida, right? She said, benefits of sleeping well. Distractions are so much powerful than that disturb sleep. In Kuala Lumpur, any centers to train how to sleep well?
Again, Yolanda, that's another topic. But I think there are, when it comes to distraction and all these things, I'm not too sure exactly what you mean by that distraction because I can interpret it in a many different ways. But to me, I will look at it as an arousal system. Right? Sometimes we cannot sleep. Right? It's not because we're not ready, because we have this arousal system. Right? In fact, if you look at the sleep science itself, traditionally they say there are two major systems that is contributing to good sleep. One is about your circadian, right? Circadian rhythm, the C system. Another one is about the S system, which is about sleep pressure. But I argue that there's another system which is called arousal system. Sometimes you have a S system and a C system working well, but just before you go to bed, sometimes you go and check your email or you saw your WhatsApp messages and things come out, right? Or even you read your Facebook newsfeed and you see something that is exciting or something that triggers you to think about. Right? That arousal system is distractions to me, right? More than the blue light itself. So it's really about there are strategies to deal with that, strategy to activate the brain dumping strategy and so forth. There are many hacks that we can use in order to overcome that. But suffice to say that managing your arousal system is one of the key things when it comes to distractions, and one of the most important aspects as well to help you to fall asleep and stay asleep well.
All right. Okay. Another question here from YL Hui. Say, I sleep 7 hours a night, sleeping and waking up at about the same time. my room is very dark, etc. However, my thoughts are still running havoc in my mind, especially if I have a lot of work and the next day I'm tired. Could you please explain about this?
Yeah, that's what I was just alluding to just now. It's an arousal system. You may have 7 hours of sleep, but the quality of sleep is another matter, right? I think from
Mm,
the sleep science perspective, 7 hours is considered to be good. But the question is, are you having enough restorative sleep? How about the quality of the sleep itself? And as you also rightly mentioned, your brain is active, right? Even in sleep, you're not fully rested. Right? There are strategies that you can deal with it. And the arousal system, again, is what I just alluded to just now. Right? I think in this case, probably one of the things is to give your brain the permission to rest. Right? You
mm,
can do that actually by simple things like brain dumping. Let's just say, an hour or 2 hours before, right? You start to jot down. Let's say you have many things that you want to do the next morning. Then you start to jot down, right? Say, 1, 2, 3, this is what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm going to do this, that, and so on and so forth. This is how I'm going to deal with this problem. All that. And you keep that aside. Now, by doing this, actually, you're telling your brain that it is safe to let go now. Right?
mm.
Cognitively speaking, right, it is safe to let go now. And the brain understands this. The brain feels safe. And the brain then decides that, okay, I'm ready to fall asleep. So I'll suggest you try that little hacks. And of course, there are many other stuff as well, right? Going for a hot bath, looking at other aspects. I think you're quite well versed in that sense. But I would suggest you look at some brain dumping strategies, right? Uh, Something like that. Hopefully that can help.
I think the brain dumping strategy is very good, right? I'm actually doing that because I'm an event person, and a lot of our event friends also is like because we already like when setting up and doing events, we don't really have time. Means that we are forced to be can't cannot sleep in a sense because we're running the activities or setting up midnights. So whenever we got time to sleep, we will sleep. But again, we have a lot of works to carry out next day. So we're actually doing that, the dumping strategy, brain dumping strategy. We just like, as you said, we write down and then we actually sometimes also calm down ourselves in the sense that, okay, these are things we already settled and these are things we need to do the next day. So as long as you have that strategy and then the next, we can actually sleep very well. And the other strategy is that beside that also, I'm actually doing the so-called the gratitude journal. It means that it's like, okay, I'm thankful that today I have done this thing. I'm thankful that I already do this. So your brain will be like, very peace. It's like, okay, I've done
Yeah,
something. And then
very
the
good.
next day, what's your planning? You write the job list for next day. I
That's
think
very
that's
good,
will be
Samantha.
very good on that. Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah, the gratitude journaling. Have a wind down routine, right? Maybe
Mm,
a wind down routine, right? It's something that you practice consistently. The brain just not switch off just like that. It's not like on and off button or something. You give yourself time, right? Let it relax, just like you're landing a plane, right? You need to do preparations for that
mm.
as well. So that could be one of them that you do. Gratitude journaling, I like that a lot. I think it's a good suggestion.
All right. Okay. I think now we are already over time for 10 minutes, right? That is time for us to say thank you. Is there anyone? There is another questions again. Right. Let's us to answer the last questions. It say Dr. Sibai is from Li Hun. Okay. I believe the habits and self-discipline is the key. We know sleep well and enough is important. And you said you are expert in sleep recovery. May I know, do you got any other tool to assist? I truly believe habits is the key. With some tools or equipments may help.
Definitely, there are tools and equipments that can.
Asking for two.
Yeah, but first thing is to look at I think it's to look at the sleep science itself, right? The sleep hygienes. Before we even get to the tools itself, we look at the sleep hygienes, right? The habits, as you say, sleep hygiene is really about habitual, right? It's habitual. You do certain things on a consistent basis, and the fundamental idea behind is that the brain likes to, or the body likes to have a rhythm. So if you practice it consistently, like the wake up time, all that kind of getting sunlight, wind down routine, and things like that, right? That can actually help. Definitely it would help. But failing which, I think we can look at something even more Further, if you still have some sleeping issues, then you'll be like the CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, right? I wouldn't suggest any medications. If you're talking about tools and medications, that is, to me, that is not something that we would access, we'll talk about. Right? CBTI could be one intervention. And of course, there are tools. Technology has, has advanced so much. And personally, I've also used sound frequency therapy, where you actually look at the brainwave itself. You see the brainwave actually in a wakeful situation, you have it's operating at the beta wave, and you're going to fall asleep is alpha and theta, and finally it goes into the delta wave, right? Sound frequency technology can actually help us to reset the brainwave itself, right? Allowing you to actually move from alpha to from beta to alpha, theta, and finally to delta. So the technology is available. Of course, there are other devices as well, right? I think it's beyond the scope of this presentation itself. So if you're interested, we can take these conversations after this.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Tan. And also thank you everyone's online with us today. And also thank you all those that is asking all the questions and let all of us learn more. Right. Okay. But it's time's up, and we see you again next week for Dr. Susan Chin. Her topic is what? Well, wait. Okay. Think well, feel well, and perform well. All right. So we see you again next week. And now is call for the day for our these sessions. And then thank you very much, everyone. And a big thank you to Dr. Dan.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Samantha.